Greetings, everyone. Tim Anderson here, aka Renfill, and welcome to the latest episode of Monday Musings. It is currently 4 a.m. on March 29th, 2021. I can kind of grip my coffee cup again with my main hand. It's still a little, I don't know how well you can see that. You can see the pinkness to the fingers. This one's the worst. Um, but I burned my hand on Tuesday of last week, 6 days ago. And I'm finally to the point where I can the burns were across three of the knuckles, but I'm kind of finally to the point where it's kind of started healing and I can at least grip a coffee cup again, which is nice. So, what are we going to talk about today? We got a few things. Let's start off with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 tabs open in Google. I'm just going to pick one. All right, so one of our long-term community members, Himvar in Discord, aka Liam, in real life, has got this blog project called ForgottenRealmsReading.com, where he has been spending the past few years just going through the entire Forgotten Realms catalog, and then over on Discord, he drops links to the new reviews slash blog posts when he's finished up a book. It's a very, you know that's a pretty big undertaking. There are a lot of books in Forgotten Realms. I don't even know how many books. I think my brother asked me the day, like, how many books were there in Dragonlance, and I was like, I don't know, like 150, 200. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been a few weeks since he asked me that question. I'm pretty sure I went and did a quick Google search and found that there are like 190 books in Dragonlance, and I would assume there are at least a similar amount, if not more, in the Forgotten Realms series, because the Forgotten Realms series has been going on a lot longer than Dragonlance has. Um, so this idea, or this mission, I guess I should say, of going through and reading all of the Forgotten Realms novels is it's impressive, to say the least. And one of the questions I would have, because I've not read all of them, I remember reading you know, the Elminster novels back in the day. Um, I've definitely read the Icewind Dale trilogy, the Dark Elf trilogy, a lot of Salvatore's work, but I've never dug into a lot of the other authors beyond Greenwood and Salvatore who have done work in the Forgotten Realms. And so I would wonder, and I'm sure um, Hembar can speak to this more in his blog posts and maybe in Discord or wherever, but I wonder if how the quality is in terms of all of the books, because I know with Dragonlance, which I'm more familiar with, there were a handful of authors that wrote good books, and then there was a lot of stuff where it was just like, they were just hiring people to crank out more content to make book sales. And, they weren't trying to write New York Times best-selling pieces. They were just, fulfilling the need for their customers. And as a result, I kind of feel like the quality of a lot of the Dragonlance novels suffered. I mean, when you're talking about a series that has 200 novels in it or more, yeah, you kind of lead to not every single book is a diamond in the rough. Um, but I think the one cool thing about this, either project, regardless of what you look at, and this is kind of what I'm going to spin this conversation around towards, is that if you look at the way that allowed these worlds to spin off into their own thing and become these massive places with a really varied history. I mean, you look at like the Baldur's Gate series as an example, the video game series, and that takes place in the Sword Coast. It's a very small, chunk of this overall massive world. And so when you look at this massive world, you've got little bits and places where you can set adventures that are fun to play, whether it's a campaign module or a video game. And you don't have to go on this world-sprawling adventure to have fun and tell an adventurous story. And when you've got lots of different adventurous minds working together, I think there's a lot to be said for the amount of variety you get out of having all those different people working on projects, even if the quality isn't necessarily the same across the board. Now, we can kind of see this unfolding in real time too, because they've definitely done this with the Marvel properties, with the Marvel movies, and we're seeing Star Wars start to take the same approach with the High Republic. And I say modern day because you can look at Star Wars, and I'm a big fan of what are they calling it now? The Legends. I think it was at one point the extended universe. Now it's called Legends or something. But they started off with the Thrawn novels in the early 90s. I'll never forget walking into Walmart with my mom, and I don't know, 12, 13, whenever that first book came out, 92, 93. Um, Walking into Walmart, and they had a big display case, as they used to do. This doesn't really happen anymore, but it used to be that any place that sold books, books used to be a big deal, bigger than video games. And now it's video games. But I remember walking into Walmart, and there was this big display case, like this big kind of like pyramid display case, and they had the paperback version of Heir to the Empire, and I'll never forget that cover with Joris Kaboth, I think is his name, that Jedi, and he's got his hands out, and there's lightning flying from his hands. You've got Han and Leia, Luke, and new characters as well. And I was like, oh, what is this? And my mom was kind enough to get me a copy, and I got sucked in. And throughout the 90s, you know, there was dozens, if not 100 or more. I don't really know anymore. But I remember being an avid collector of those first 7, 8, 9 years of books that came out of the Star Wars Extended Universe. The Jedi Academy series. There's a lot of standalone novels too, by people like Barbara Hambly, I think is her name. Um, you know, just all of these sci-fi and fantasy authors who were contracted to come in and write stories. And to some degree, they had a little bit of creative freedom to just kind of create what they wanted. And of course, it had to pass the checks and eventually go through Lucas himself. But um, some of that stuff, like, ended up becoming canon. Like Thrawn became a canon character, as did the Coruscant, the city planet. That didn't. That was never in any of the movies. That was something that started in that first Thrawn series um, that he wrote. I'm forgetting his last name at the moment. Timothy Zahn. I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. Um, so there is something to be said for these massive sprawling universes where a lot of people are working in it as a shared property. Um, anyway, you can go to his project, which is I gotta go find it now. It's the Forgotten Realms Lyceum. Lyceum? I never know how to pronounce that word. It's ForgottenRealmsReading.com. So if you want to check out Hembar's stuff reading through the Forgotten Realms books, I would highly recommend it. Um, some of them are worth reading. The Dark Elf trilogy is fun, but I think my favorite is the Icewind Dale trilogy. That Icewind Dale trilogy is great. Um, it's equally as good as the Dragonlance Chronicles, in my opinion, and that's saying a lot because Salvatore can be a little repetitive, um, and he can be hard to read sometimes, but worth checking out if you haven't already done so. All right, next topic for the morning. Dark Age of Camelot, which is an MMORPG that I never played before, because I was way too heavy into EverQuest when it came out. Um, Nathan Napalm has a Dark Age of Camelot guild that he just kicked off last week, and I got involved more as a you know I've always been intrigued by Dark Age of Camelot. I don't like PvP, but in this case it's realm versus realm. And that's always made more sense to me. I've always said that if a if if Dune was to be made into a PvP game, like a realm versus realm game where it's like planet versus planet, kingdom versus kingdom, family versus family kind of thing. I was like, that's a game I could see myself playing because it makes sense. But I don't like PvP games. I don't just go log into a PvP game because I don't like it because of the toxicity and just the way people act in PvP. But there's a lot you can do, I guess, in Dark Age of Camelot that has nothing to do with PvP because you can start in your realm and it's relatively safe from a PvE standpoint. Anyway, I digress. What I want to talk about is I never played it. I saw that they were just bit my lip. That was fun. I saw that they were doing this community event, and having always been intrigued, I said I'll give it a shot. I don't have a lot of free time to play an MMORPG right now because I've got a lot of other irons in the fire. But like I just hung out with them yesterday on Sunday for about 3 hours in late afternoon. I think played from like 5 to 8 my time and Central Time. And I was, pleasantly surprised. There are a lot of things that felt very similar to EverQuest, um, but there's a lot that's different as well. And I think what was interesting to me is when I was hanging out with the community, I'm hearing people have the same extremely fond memories and shared passion for that game that I've always seen with the group of people who I've played EverQuest with. So, for 6, 7 years now, with the Saga of Lucimi community going out and playing, EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, all these older games, playing Project 1999 multiple times. Um, I've always had that passion for EverQuest because that was the game that got me into MMORPGs. And for almost all of the people that I was playing with yesterday, this is the game that got them into MMORPGs. So that for me is a very interesting experiment. Um, but it's also scratching this itch that I've had for a very long time to at least try out Dark Age of Camelot. Now I know obviously we're playing on an emulator server, which is not the same thing as classic. It's got sped up XP and things are a lot different, but it's interesting. And I see myself spending probably at least the month of April, hanging out and enjoying that on weekends, perhaps like Saturdays and Sundays. I have zero time to do it during the week, but Saturdays and Sundays I keep free for the most part. And usually what I do on Saturdays and Sundays is the bulk of my um, Project Ramen work happens on Saturdays and Sundays, and then any like marathon shows that Christian and I want to watch if we've been waiting. For example, Outlander is a good example because we love that show, but I hate watching episodes week to week. So we usually wait until there's, you know, 6 or 8 episodes ready, and then we'll take a weekend and we'll just binge watch all the episodes. But we don't really have any shows we're watching right now. We did start the Lost Pirates of the Caribbean Netflix documentary on Friday, but we didn't watch it over the weekend or Saturday. I think we watched the first episode on Saturday, but we didn't yesterday, and I will explain why in a little bit because that's actually on my topic of discussion today, which I need to rearrange my tabs up here. Anyway, Dark Age of Camelot. I'm not gonna say that it's the coolest thing I've ever played because it's not, but I had fun yesterday. I think most of my fun was had because I was hanging out with really passionate people who are just good people to hang around with, and it's a good Nathan Napalm's got a good gaming community going on over there. Um, so if you have a passing interest in Dark Age of Camelot, I would say check it out. Go join their Discord and hang out. He's got tons of videos from the last few days. of Dark Age Camelot, and I'm probably gonna do a video for my YouTube channel at some point over the next week or two, just to talk about my experience in Dark Age of Camelot. Um, and I just remembered something else I could put on today's Mondays and MMORPGs, which is this. So before I get too sidetracked, go check that out if you haven't already. Um, Big patch coming for Cyberpunk 2077 sometime. It's supposed to happen. They said late March, but we're March 29th, but they did just do a tweet a little bit ago as I was getting woken up this morning. So maybe that'll be coming over the next couple of days. Once this patch releases for Cyberpunk 2077, assuming it doesn't break anything else, I am probably going to be doing another playthrough. Don't know exactly when yet. Um, because that first playthrough was fun, but it was so plagued with bugs. I would really like to go through it again and have a bug-free experience and play the game as it was meant to be played on the PS4. Um, but that patch is coming out in the next few days, I would assume, and that's supposed to be the second huge patch, and then they're going to continue to make improvements and updates to it as they go along this year. So worth mentioning because I would really like to get back into that and play it again and possibly stream it with um, the remote play here on my PC. We'll see. I also tried out Magic Legends this week, and I have to say that I was not impressed. Yeah. I wanted to like Magic Legends. I was hoping that it was going to be fun, and I don't know. I played it, and it's not that I didn't have fun, but there's not enough there to just grab me, and pull me in. It does have some cool storyline, and you can group up to 3 people. And I think that once it's launched, I will play it, but I'm going to be playing it on the PS4 or the PS5. I'll be playing it on the console. I have no desire to play that game on the PC. It's for me, it's set up as a Diablo style game, and I like playing those types of games with a controller on the console. It's a weird thing for me. There are games that I want to play when I'm sitting here at my desk, and then there's games that I want to play when I'm just literally sprawled out on the couch, relaxed and not thinking about anything. And I'm gonna give you an example of the PC game that I'm really enjoying here in a moment. Um, but Magic Legends, played it. I played it about 2 hours on the day that the open beta went live. Didn't see anything that made me go, this game sucks, but I also didn't see anything that made me go, oh my god, I have to play this game. This is literally what it was. I pre-patched it a couple days earlier, logged in, played it for a couple hours, got done, and deleted it off my hard drive because I was like, I'm not going to play this on the PC. This will be a PS4 game for me, and there's not enough here to make me go, yeah, I got to keep it on my drive and play it, once or twice a week. Sorry. However, there is another game that I played this week that I picked up, and I've been keeping an eye on it for about a year now. I think it may have been Adric who mentioned it to me in Discord like a year ago. We were talking about like dice-based games and things of that nature, and games that have really in-depth um, like tabletop systems. Um, and so it's called Solasta, Crown of the Magister. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it happened to pop up in my Twitter feed. GOG was running a 20% off, and it was already only like $12 or something, so it was down to under $10 with the discount. And I was like, hey, I've had my eye on that for a while. It's in early access still, but I'll pick it up. It's $10. It's not, done. Uh, I lost like 4 hours the first playthrough, which was Saturday, and am eagerly awaiting the next spare time that I have, next spare moments that I have to dive back in. It's definitely an indie game. It's in early access, and they're doing it the same way that Larian Studios is doing Baldur's Gate 3 in the sense that the early access only covers like the first, they say 10 hours. So I don't know how accurate that is because I know with Baldur's Gate they told me, oh, it's the first 25 hours. And my first playthrough, I got like 55 hours out of my first playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. So I'm not sure, how much I'm actually getting out of it. But just in the 4 hours that I played the other day, I already got my $10 worth, in my opinion. It's definitely indie. There are some things that I kind of looked at and went, meh. As an example, the character models are okay. Um, the voice acting, mm, also okay. And there's not a lot of, at the moment, there's not a lot of variety in the voice options that you have. I think there's like two or three. I don't know. I just kind of let it do default, and then when it was doing the the introduction animation sequences in those first few tutorials, like all of my characters sounded very much the same. There was some slight difference. Like my halfling actually sounded different, but like my half elf and my elf both had I swear it was the exact same voice, which is weird. So there are some aspects to it that are definitely indie. It's definitely early access. However, I didn't see any bugs when I played. There are some things I didn't like, but they're literally just like quality of life access features. There was some weird functionality about, no, in my opinion, maybe I didn't research the commands easily enough, but I didn't have an easy way to like select my whole party. And it was like I was constantly accidentally sending one party member off on their own, and then I didn't know the keyboard hotfix, not hotfix, the keyboard hot button to just push it to like select the whole party. So I would have to drag the square over the whole party and move them out together. And that's probably just by fault for not looking at the controls. But here's what I do love about the game and why I'm talking about it in this episode. It is hands down, I think, the most detailed character creator that I've come across in like a decade. I mean, it's I guess that they're using fifth edition, the fifth edition rule set for this. But I tell you, I spent at least an hour and a half rolling my four characters, and they have pre-built characters that you can choose from. Um, but man, there's so many options to choose from. You got there's the races, and then there's sub races, and everybody's got their own unique, pros and cons and stat bonuses and negatives. And then you get into like the background for each character, and then you've got these uh, I forget what they call them, but like these personality traits that you can choose for your characters that are based on like your race and your profession, and those can kind of stack on top of each other to give you bonuses in conversations and the like. So being altruistic or egoistic or greedy or you know pessimistic. I mean, there's all these cool options that you can choose from. I'm definitely going to be doing an overview video probably just on the character creation process because I found it to be so fascinating. Um, and I may end up doing more. I may do a series on Solasta this week or next week as I have time because I'm definitely going to be sinking my teeth into that game more. So character creation was amazing, but here's what I love is that they've taken a tabletop game and they've really done a good job of transporting you into that tabletop space as good as, in my opinion, as like Baldur's Gate 1, Icewind Dale game, Baldur's Gate 2, Icewind Dale 2, those games. This does that same thing, but it adds dice rolls, visible dice rolls to the equation. So literally, like when and Larian Studios is doing this to some degree with Baldur's Gate 3, which I appreciate. But theirs feels like Baldur's Gate 3 feels like a very much more AAA high-end polished version of that. And this feels like, this is definitely more of an indie version of that. And I love the two equally. I think they're both a lot of fun, and I don't see any reason to say that the AAA version is better than the indie version. I think they're both fun. There's a lot more visible dice rolling going on in Solasta than in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's a new world, so there's new things to learn. Um, but it's just a really cool like tabletop version. It's a CRPG. It's I think it's very well done for an indie game. I think it's definitely worth the 10 or 15 bucks that you can pay to pick it up at, even in early access. Um, I like I said, there are a few things I don't like. The other thing I haven't enjoyed so far is and I'm not deep enough into the game yet, so I may find that it gets better as it goes along. But I felt like there wasn't enough of an explanation when you get going about like the lore. It was kind of and I don't want, I say this loosely, so this is not meant as an insult to them. I felt like the story that you get during the intro trailer is a very kind of generic, you know, fallen empire, and you're going to go explore that fallen empire type story. And it was just kind of a very quick, and it's probably related to budget reasons and so on and so forth. Being a small indie team, there's only so much you can do with the intro trailer. You're not trying to put together a 5-minute mini video. Um, but like I was saying earlier, like the writing, the voice acting, and the storyline is kind of, if I had to rate it on like a scale of 1 to 10, I'd put it at like a 4 or a 5. That part I don't really care for. Whereas the gameplay and the mechanics, I'm giving like a 10, like 9 or a 10. Like I'm really loving everything I see from a mechanic standpoint and just the in-depth nature of that game. So, if I had to give it like a rating as of what I've seen so far after playing it for just a few hours, I'd give it like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. I'm having fun. I'm definitely would recommend it to anybody who has, 10, 15 bucks to spend and wants to dive into an early access game. I'm really looking forward to producing some content around that. So we'll see if maybe I can't get a Solasta video out this week, at the very least covering, like what I'm talking about here, but with, video scenes from the game and so on and so forth. So stay tuned for that because I'm really having fun and I can't wait to dive into that a little bit more. I probably could only play it a couple times a week, 2 or 3 times a week because of my schedule, but hot damn, it's pretty fun so far, and I'm feeling like that's a very good purchase. And it's something that will keep me occupied throughout the month of April. And I really look forward to seeing what their team can do as it comes out. And it's interesting because they started off with a Kickstarter, a successful Kickstarter that raised, I think, 250, $300,000 somewhere in there. Off the top of my head, I'm not looking at the Kickstarter right now, so I can't tell you exactly. But this looks like they've got a small team of like 15, 20 people. Um, Kudos to them. It looks really cool. All right, we're about 28 minutes in. All right, it's time for me to do my prerequisite Project Ramen update for the week. So if you didn't catch it last week, Chris joined my brother and I last Wednesday. We did like a 15-minute overview, kind of this is what we've been working on, this is what we're going to be working on. So Joey and I sat down and said we've kind of already gotten through all the brainstorming we need to do for the first 6 months of the game, or the first 6 months of work, I should say. So now we're just in production mode. But we were like, we should still do something on Wednesday nights, and we said, well, why don't we just do what we always did? With Saga of Lucemia, we did our weekly stand-ups on Wednesday nights. So why don't we just keep doing that? And instead of doing it behind closed doors, we'll just do it in public. And that's what we did. So we did our weekly stand-up last Wednesday, and I think we're gonna keep doing that moving forward. Um, I think we're gonna probably make that a live format sooner or later. Um, it remains to be seen. The reason we haven't done it live so far is because I haven't taken the time to like make thumbnails for the YouTube videos to go live or anything else. So we just record them and upload them when we're done. So we may switch over to live format in the future as we get more subscribers on Patreon, and more people interested in the project, just so that we can be answering questions from people. The downside of that is that those, instead of being 10 to 15-minute videos, those will end up becoming 30-minute videos or longer, which is fine. But it would give people a chance to tune in and say hi and ask questions as we're going along. So we might do one live this week. We'll see. Um, but that's going to be the format moving forward, is on Wednesday nights. Those videos, we're going to be getting together and doing those. And Chris will be joining us for some of them, maybe not all of them, but for some of them, because her part of the project is less involved than my brother's and I would think, the way I see it anyway so far, because she's very much just kind of, she's not involved in the brainstorming so much yet. Not that she doesn't want to be, because she's talked to me like she has ideas, and I've definitely incorporated some of those ideas into some of the stuff I'm working on, but she's never sat down with my brother and I and brainstormed that way. It's mostly been when we're on our walks, because we go walk about 3 times a week, and then we run 2 or 3 times a week. We usually go out like 6 days a week. We go and we either walk or run. It's usually alternating days, and we always talk about what we're working on during those walks and runs. And so she's very much new to gaming. I mean, she's been around it for a long time, but she was never involved in Saga of Lucemia. So it was always just very much this thing that I was doing. But she's involved in this one, and so she's asking all these questions about, like, how does this work, and how does this work, and how do you, like, I think it was 3 days ago, the big talk was she was wanting me to walk her through my process of world building. Like, she was like, "Well, how do you do that? Like, are you coming up with your own version of, like," and I'm like, "Cause she hasn't watched the episodes because she's got her own stuff going on. It's been very much a thing where I go to her and say, "Can you work, could you maybe do like some versions of trees?" And so she'll get me 5 or 6 versions of trees. She's very much been a kind of concept artist from the outside, but she's starting to get more involved in the inside. So she was asking me, like, are you coming up with your own version of like elves and dwarves? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And here's what. And so then I ran her through all of the Patreon posts basically that have come out for the patrons, and the Google document that's up there for patrons to look at. And so I was walking her through, like, here's my version of elves, here's my version of dwarves, then we have the halflings and we have the brownies, and I was like, here's the elven civil war, and here's the quantum war, here's what brought the humans north, and so I was just diving into that. And so she's becoming familiar with that process, which is helping her with inspiration. And she also went back, and so we watched this show. It's called Merlin. It was a BBC show from probably 10, 15, well, more like 15 years ago now. Not a huge budget, but it was an interesting show that ran for, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 seasons, and we watched it together probably 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's on Netflix, and so she decided to dive back into that last week, and she's been binge watching the episodes and, like, pausing it and taking pictures on her phone at places where she sees something that inspires her as a cool piece of concept art that she could do. So this is great to me because she's finding her own way of finding inspiration. I often will go to like ArtStation and look at things, and I've given her those resources, and she's slowly diving into those things as well. But she's finding inspiration from, like, shows that we watch. I talked about this last week. We were watching the Wolfman film, and she paused and took a screenshot there. But she's doing the same thing with Merlin because that show has a lot of fantastical environments. Um, so that's been fun for her. And thanks to everyone over at Patreon for their support, because that helped out. Um, she got her first drawing tablet. We picked her up a Wacom One drawing tablet, which arrived yesterday, which was what most of yesterday was me, spending a couple hours getting all of that, getting it registered, getting all the software downloaded, um, just getting everything set up for her. And then she spent, I don't know what time she came to bed last night, because I was like, it was 9 o'clock, and I was like, I gotta go to bed. And she was like, I'm gonna stay up. She's just like, she was watching tutorials and just diving into the next step of her evolution as an artist, which is really fun for me to watch. Um, it's not to say that she's going to stop doing pencil art or paintings. This is just another tool in her toolbox, just as much as she has, 50 different types of pencils and 100 different types of paints and all her brushes, and she's got different types of paper that she draws on, depending on whether she's doing a quick sketch or something that's more finalized. This is just something that's the next step, and it's literally, the tablet is literally was something that was bought for work on Project Drammond, so that as she starts to take, like, these images I've got on the wall here, as she starts to take these images and put them into digital format so that I can then take them and put them the into the core rulebook or the chapters, um, that's something that she's really enjoying. And so, um, obviously the supporters on Patreon, you guys are helping out with that. Thank you so much for the financial contributions. Like I said, we picked up that toolkit pack from my brother, like, I don't know, a month ago. And then, we with this the Patreon money will go towards helping, with the tablet costs over time, and then as my brother and I get more assets purchased. But um, we're deep enough now into Project Drama that it was time. She's been working on the project now for about six, no, more like 10 weeks maybe. I was thinking like 6 to 8 weeks, but it's been more like 10 weeks now. Um, and yeah, so the tablet arrived yesterday. We did a quick TikTok video where she said thanks to everybody and showed it off. So you can find the links to that below. We also talked a little bit about that, and Discord links are below. So yeah, that's her next process. And theoretically, and I don't know when this will happen. I told her yesterday, I was like, there's no pressure here. Um, I've got 3 months basically. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I've got several months worth of work ahead of me to get the first version of the core rulebook, that first draft, ready to go. So you've got, 3 months to learn how to use the tablet and, start producing pieces of digital art that I can put into that, because I don't need 100 pieces of art to put into like a 50-page document. I need 10 pieces, would be nice. And pencil wise, in 10 weeks, she's probably produced 20 final pieces and like 30 concepts in total. So I have no doubt that once she gets familiar with the tools and everything else, she'll be able to start cranking out like one, it depends on what she's doing, because there's days when she'll sit down and she'll do like 3 concepts in a day. But then it's very much because of the way she works, she might not do anything for 2 days, and then she'll come back and do another 1 or 2 concepts, and then maybe take a day or two between, because she's looking at places for inspiration, and she's watching tutorials, and she's doing like learning sketches, which are not the same thing as what she's doing for Project Ramen. So that's her update. And maybe she'll talk about it more on Wednesday night. I'll let her dive into things there. And then overall, I do want to talk about Project Drummond in general. So I dropped a pretty big update into Discord on. I gotta go look at when that was now. Is that yesterday? I'm scrolling up. That was Saturday. I did that update on Saturday. So here's the short version. Joey and I met up on Thursday night after our Lotro session, and we were just talking because he's had a lot of rainy days, so he hasn't been able to go out and do his day job. So he was able to put in a lot of work last week on Project Drummond. And one of the things we're loving about Unreal versus Unity, which we used for 6.5 years, is Blueprints. Blueprints is so amazing. It's so powerful. And it allows people like us who have next to no programming experience to be able to jump in and do fun, cool things. A lot of the packs have the blueprints already put in there, but then you can experiment with things, and he's been putting a lot of time into learning that. And the pack that we picked up, which Sunday we did an update called Adventure Game Update number 4. There is an overview video here on YouTube. It's the first time I've done an overview video for any of the adventure game updates, but it was a significant enough update with some really cool video content in it and everything that I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit on Sunday. But going back to the Discord post, we stayed up Thursday night and we should have recorded the episode, but we were just like furiously taking notes and just brainstorming between the two of us. But basically, the toolkit pack that we picked up, which I think is called Adventuring Point and Click Adventuring Toolkit or something like that. I've got the name in disc in the Patreon post for subscribers. I've also linked to the asset for people who want to take a look at it. But that asset pack is basically the backbone for building a point and click adventure game. And there was a bit of a learning curve for him to get up to speed with it because the documentation's not that great, like many cool toolkits. Um, but it had rave reviews and people seemed to love it, which is why we felt it was worth the cost when we picked it up. And as he's gotten into it, he's like, yeah, the documentation's a little lacking, but it's a really cool and powerful tool, and check this out. And so we dove into what he's been able to get done in like a week. And it's basically that whole starter scene with the town and the first four, the village settlement where we're going to be starting out, which if you go back to brainstorming episode 2 here on YouTube, you can listen to more about that story that we're planning to put together. Um, Being able to look at that coming together in just the week of time that he's had to really sink his teeth into things was pretty amazing. And so what we did is we sat down and we talked about what can we realistically get done in our spare time over the next few months. And we kind of put together this, what we think is a realistic milestone, which we're shooting for now. And I put all the details for that in Discord. So if you want to read up on that, follow the links below. It's in the general chat section of Discord, and it's a sticky pinned post up at the top, but that went out on Saturday. But basically, we're looking at, as far as the adventure game goes, we're going to try to have a playable demo ready by July. And it's going to be, we're thinking like a couple hour demo. But it's basically going to be that starter scene with the buildings and the first, quests and narrative and just, a working prototype that we can then release to people and say, here's what we're working on, as opposed to only ever seeing, the weekly updates, which are a great way for us to document the process, but to be able to actually have a playable demo to give to people um, by July. So again, our goal is to try to have a working, fully playable prototype by the end of the year. Um, who knows? It's going to be interesting to see how all that comes together, but we're feeling pretty confident after seeing what he was able to get done in a week of being able to put in some serious hours into things. So that part of it, we're shooting for July, and then I'm shooting for um, the first version of the core rulebook. I'm thinking like a 50-page document, which will basically have races, history, and the basic rules to get going, probably with some starter spells for like level 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 or something. I'm going to have that ready by July at the same time, and also try to have the first campaign module done at the same time. And then once we hit July, assuming we have all three of those things done, that's when I'm going to look for 8 people to join in a Roll20 campaign that we're going to stream once a week on YouTube, playing through that first campaign module and using that rule set. And the play testers, as well as the community who tune in, will be providing feedback on that as we go along, um, so that we can continue fleshing out the rule set and the campaign module throughout the rest of the year. In between that, I'm going to start work on the novel here sometime in April. We've got this is the last week of March. I mean, I got a few days left, 3 days left of the month. I'm basically done with the world map. The only thing I have left to do is I got to go in and add names of rivers and put some more rolling hills in and stuff. But that map is pretty much ready to go. We've got the first book arc outlined in our brainstorming 4 episode, I think, as well as the trilogy arc for the books. We've got the first few chapters outlined. I'm going to be working more on the outline this week. So I'll be working on the book a little bit throughout April, May, and June, but the primary objective is to get the first version of the rulebook and the first version of the campaign module done by July to coincide with the workable, playable demo that my brother's going to be shooting to have ready by the end of that period as well. And we're kind of trying to look at this as in terms of the adventure game, we're looking at this in terms of chapter updates, if you can think of it that way. So we're going to try to have this first chapter done over the next few months so that players can jump in and play that first chapter and then the second chapter will be what he works on for like uh, July, August, September, and then October, November, December. So remember, we're not shooting for a huge game here. We're shooting for a 10 to 15 hour experience, maybe 20 at the most, but a small adventure game that we can produce by the end of the year. Um, and then we'll go from there and see how things evolve depending on Patreon and other things. We've already looked at it and said, assuming we can hit all our milestones, then the first thing we would do is if we have everything ready by like December, then we'll be hitting up GDC and probably GDC in early 2022, and then PAX East in mid 2022. So we hit the West Coast and the East Coast with that adventure game and see what happens with it. Um, it's different than what we worked on before, but it's also a lot easier in the sense that having spent 6.5 years working on an MMORPG and developing that, um, and everything else, this is a much easier project in terms of the scope is a lot less. There's not as many working parts. There's not as many egos in the room. There's not as many people to work with. So it's literally just I'm just kind of leaving him alone and he does his thing. And then we have our brainstorming sessions. And then when he comes and we have our brainstorming sessions and we talk about story. Once he's ready for me to start implementing writing, I'll be getting into that. And we do have to, we're talking about one of the meetings we have to have very soon is we got to sit down and discuss like camera angles for the first, 5 scenes. Where do we want the camera to be? We've actually got to iron out what do the first 2 hours look like in terms of quest and storyline, and then he's going to start to implement the mechanics for the quests and everything, and then we'll start to work on the writing. So, I mean, there's a collaborative process, but for the most part, my brother and I have a very good working relationship, and so it's very much where we can sit down and have a brainstorming session, and he knows exactly what to do after that brainstorming session, which is great. So I'm like 50 minutes in. This turned out to be a long Monday Musings episode, and like 20 minutes of talk just about Project Drummond. Um, but that's what these episodes are about. It's about me rambling. So there you go. So we're having a lot of fun, a lot of progress being made on that, and we've actually set our first milestones. These are kind of internal milestones. The cool thing about Project Drummond is it's not we're not working against any timelines. It's just something for ourselves. And Joey and I, when we started talking about doing this like last October, November, um, that's the first time we started having conversations about things. It was like, well, let's wait until the new year and see how we want to do things. And then once we got to January, we actually started brainstorming and kind of trying to lay this thing out. And it was like we were gonna do it anyway. Patreon is just a way to get community members involved and have people join us along the journey if they want to, and help out along the way and be a part of that, which I think is a cool thing for people who like that kind of stuff. I know there's been some people who are like, you're crowdfunding the project. It's like we're actually not crowdfunding the project. We're self-funding the project because we're working on it for free. If people want to contribute through Patreon, they can, but it's not. You have to think about it this way. A lot of crowdfunded projects, when I see crowdfunded projects, I think of a project that if it doesn't get the funding, it doesn't go forward. Whereas we're very much working on this regardless of whether or not people contribute to the Patreon or not. It's just a great way for people to help out. Like, we definitely picked up that first asset pack with money from Patreon. And over time, as the money accumulates, that will help towards purchasing more packs and we'll put the money towards the tablet that we just picked up for Chris and so on and so forth. So that kind of stuff is very much appreciated. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a crowd-funded project. It's a project that we're doing regardless of whether or not anybody contributes, but we have the Patreon there so that if people want to come in and join us, they can. So, on that note, if you haven't already done so, check out the links below, pick up a subscription, and get involved. We do 3 posts a week. We do one core rulebook update, one uh, book update or concept art update, and one adventure game update every week. There's daily stuff going out on my TikTok and my brother's TikTok. you can find links to mine and below. I need to add my brother's TikTok below as well. And of course, Discord. If you're not in our Discord, join the Discord because we also link to stuff as it goes out every single day in Discord. Plus, we talk about other stuff there. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so that you get updates for future content because we're still doing all the other stuff that we've ever done. Like Wednesday, the 31st, the next Lotro Cooking in Real Life episode goes live, and this week it is mushroom toast. Um, and Monday Musings is every Monday, and lots of other stuff. So, and I'm still doing the Lotro streams with my brother a couple times a week, playing my Lore Master. Like this past Saturday, I did Crafting and Chill. Thanks again to the Lotro team for retweeting that out on Saturday morning. I was really surprised because it was like 6:30 in the morning, and somebody from their team retweeted it. So I was like, well, that's awesome. Um, all right, I'm 50 minutes in. I gotta go. I need to wrap this up so people don't get bored. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you in whatever video is the next one to come out here on the channel, and hopefully we'll see you next week for the next Monday Musings. Hopefully we'll see you in Discord, over on TikTok, and at Patreon as well. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and safe gaming.